All right, folks, here tonight, I'm going to give y'all the results of the belief quiz, and I'm going to turn this into a bonus assignment. Now, if you'll remember, the belief quiz was actually the very first assignment from the semester. And without further ado, let me go ahead and get rolling with this. Now, what I've done, and bear with me as I kind of get my writing utensils together here, but I've done a couple of things. First, I've plotted all of the points. And just to give you a good sense of things, this point at 0, 0, where these lines intersect, is actually the origin. And the closer that you are to the origin, theoretically, the more moderate your views are. Now, what's interesting is y'all don't have a lot of people that are necessarily that close to the middle. So maybe that's part of the reason why the night class is so fun. But let me go ahead and give you a couple of other things. Now, this belief quiz, y'all, is known as the bedroom and the wallet quiz. And basically, my contention, my point on this is that if you know how much a person believes government should regulate wallet or economic issues on one hand, then on the other hand, if you know how much they believe government should regulate moral or bedroom issues on the other, you put these two ideas together and you can get a pretty good idea of what their political views overall are. Now, let me fill this in. We've got this vertical line here that is going down the center. This vertical line, y'all, is actually going to be our bedroom line. Okay. And I'll get into this a little bit more as I start to go through the quadrants. This horizontal line that's over here that goes through the center is actually what is going to be known as our wallet line. All right. And just like, old math or geometry, we've got our plus. Boy, that's a really lousy plus. Let me try and fix that. We've got our plus over here, and this plus is going to be dealing with government regulation, as this one will. We're going to have our minuses, and minuses are going to suggest that government should not be regulating. Okay. Now, let me go ahead and take these quadrant by quadrant. I mentioned to you already that the closer you are to the center, that in fact, the more moderate or maybe undecided your views are. We've got some people that are on this graph: Sonia, Ashley, Evelyn. We got some people that, in fact, scored pretty far away, and maybe even some others in addition. So we'll have to address these folks as well as we get started. Now, let me start in this bottom left-hand quadrant, y'all. And y'all are my minus people, and this is Sonia, and this is Noah. Now, minus. The idea, like I said, is how much government should regulate economic or moral issues. And in this minus quadrant, Sonia and Noah both agree that, in fact, government should not regulate economic issues as much as the individual should have the authority to be able to make decisions about economic issues. And government should not regulate bedroom or moral issues as much as the individual has the power and the authority to regulate these bedroom/moral issues. Minus. Y'all, there's a very famous quote out there. And this quote goes, "The government that governs best is the government that governs least." In other words, the more decisions that government makes, the more bad decisions government is going to make. But the more that government allows people to make decisions that cater to their lives, as opposed to one size fits all government ideas, that's actually better. Sonia and Noah, y'all are actually going to be what are known as libertarians. Y'all, like I said, libertarians are going to believe that the government that governs best governs least. Libertarians are going to believe that it is not the government's responsibility to determine our success or our failure, but rather it is our own ability, our own motivation, our own qualification. We rise or fall based upon our own merits, not because somebody is propping us up as we're going along life's journey. So when you think about it, libertarians are one of the first parties of relevance in the United States that actually advocated for legalizing weed. Now, this is not to say that Noah and Sonia are stoners. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is with libertarians believe that if you legalize weed, then you eliminate the arrests, you eliminate the court costs, you eliminate the detention fees. In other words, you significantly limit government expenses. And the idea is that now it's you, the individual, that has more control over your tax dollars, and the government has less because the government doesn't need this tax money because weed is not illegal. Understand on this when it comes to economic issues. You know, the sense is that government stays out of my wallet. Government taxes me as little as possible. I can rise to the heights that I will rise to. However, if I climb too high and then fall back down, well, guess what? That means that government is not necessarily going to be there to help me climb again. So you could argue that this is a little bit of a harsh system. Although, if I'm an individual and I'm willing to bet on myself, this might be the system that I would want to work in. Now, regarding the moral issues, I've already talked to you a little bit about weed, but understand as well, same-sex marriage. That's not a decision for government. That's a decision for individual people. Um, Abortion, that is a decision for specifically the woman. It is not supposed to be dominated by the government. You get the idea. So the trick on this is that government is going to allow the maximum amount of authority to individuals, and they're going to be free not only to make right decisions, but they're going to be free to make the wrong ones. And in fact, they're going to be responsible for the consequences, whether the decision is positive or in fact, whether the decision is negative. Now, on these, I mentioned to you Noah and Sonia. Noah and Sonia, both of y'all on 4 of the 7 questions said that government should stay out of moral issues. So y'all are actually moderate on the moral issues. Sonia, perfect score, one of only 2 in the class. On 7 of 7, you said that government should stay out of your wallet. I can spend my money better than the government can spend it for me. Noah, not quite to the level of Sonia, but on 5 of the 7, you said that government should stay out of your wallet. Both of y'all are solid or beyond solid libertarians when it comes to more economic issues, but you're much, much more moderate when it comes to the social ones. Now, let me move over and let me change colors on this. We've got this line here, and if you look at this, basically the libertarians are going to share this line, and this line is the bedroom line with the bottom right quadrant. This means that if you share that line, then you're going to share that belief. And this means that libertarians and my folks in this bottom right quadrant are going to believe in the same kinds of moral freedoms. The idea that it's going to be the individual much more than it will ever be the government that should be making these kinds of decisions. Now, where this category differs from the libertarians is going to be regulating economics. Now, understand, sometimes you could make an argument that government can make better decisions for the people than, in fact, the people can make for themselves. And, you think about the United States, we have got some people that are just insanely stupid rich. Well, they're so rich that they've left a lot of us behind. And not only like just middle class people, but I mean people that are lower middle class, people that are in poverty. And the argument is that instead of having too few people with too many resources, we need to have more people with enough resources so that they too can go and chase their dreams. In this context, you folks that are in this bottom right-hand quadrant are actually going to be what are known as my liberals. Y'all, liberals are going to be folks that are going to attack the economics, and they're going to attack it so that they don't leave people behind. You think about it, there are people that are intelligent in all areas of life. But some people don't really ever get the chance to be able to demonstrate that. They don't get the chance to pursue their dreams. They don't get the chance because they start so far behind in poverty. Well, Barack used to say when he was president of the United States that people that are wealthy have benefited from our system. So they should pay back some of the things that they've benefited in the form of higher taxes so that now government can redistribute these higher taxes to help others to be able to benefit from our system and ultimately to be able to pursue their dreams as well. Understand on this. The idea is if you make more money, maybe you should pay more taxes. The idea is that if people need health care, then in fact they should have the ability to gain health care, even if in fact they're not able to pay for it themselves. These kinds of things. The idea that government does provide certain services, maybe something as simple as delivering the mail, right? And they do it pretty good, and they do it in ways that regular businesses wouldn't. The idea is that liberals are like, hey, government isn't the problem. Government can be the solution, and government can do things that others either cannot do or maybe just as significantly will not do. So understand on this. Liberals and libertarians are going to agree that government should stay out of moral issues. Where they differ, though, is liberals are going to say we do need to take from the rich and give to the poor, kind of an OG Robin Hood kind of an idea, with the idea that if the wealthy have benefited from the system, they need to give a little bit back so that others will be able to benefit from the system and pursue their dreams as well. Now, as you look at this, there's Callan. There's Charles. There's Haldana. There's Jacob. 5 of the 7 questions, y'all said government should regulate economics. 5 of the 7 questions, y'all said government should stay out of morals. Y'all are probably good, solid, average liberals, at least based on these 14 questions that I asked. Now, if you notice, there's Cyril and there's Chase. They are much more moderate when it comes to economic issues. And if, in fact, we would have changed one question, they could have very easily have fallen over here into the libertarian side. They did not. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I bring this up to you because it is a thing, much, much more moderate. And Deborah, in fact, if we would have changed one of Deborah's questions, she could have ended up here in this other quadrant. But she scored very, very moderate on the moral issues, good, solid Democrat on the economic ones. Let me mention one thing here as I keep going, and you'll notice that some of y'all fall on the exact same line, right? So you'll notice here Deborah is on the same line as Callan, Charles, Holdania, and Jacob. There's Raheem, and there's Evelyn down at the bottom. Okay, y'all all on 5 of the 7 questions agreed that government should regulate economic issues. This is why it's so important that we know both. Not only the economic, but the moral side. Because if you notice, Deborah was very, very moderate in terms of moral issues, slightly giving some independence to the individual, but also acknowledging that there are some things that need to be regulated. Callan, Charles, Holdana, Jacob, y'all were very solid liberals in this regard. Raheem, 6 of the 7 questions, you said government needs to stay out of these behind the door, behind the scenes, personal decision making areas. And Evelyn, oh, Evelyn, 7 of 7, you were a perfect score. Basically saying that government should cede their authority to the individual, at least in moral issues. So the difference between Deborah and Evelyn is not economic. The difference between Deborah and Evelyn is moral, at least government regulation of moral. And you could do the same thing here with Sonia, with Noah, and Deborah in this regard. They all were very, very moderately leaning toward independence for the individual in moral issues. But there's a big difference between Sonia wanting economic independence, Noah being solidly in the camp of economic independence, and Deborah being much more interested in regulating the economics. Now, there are other categories that are up here. And let me go in the opposite direction, or the caddy corner direction here. So I'm going to go from the bottom right to the upper left. Now, I mentioned to you that liberals and libertarians shared a side. Well, when you're caddy corner, you don't share a side at all. And in fact, you have the exact opposite views. And maybe this wouldn't be surprised that the opposite of a liberal is theoretically a conservative. Y'all, conservatives are technically going to believe that, in fact, government should regulate the moral issues, but they should stay out of the economic ones. Now, I want you to think about this in some very basic ways. Okay, number one is we kind of talk about this. Liberals say that we want to uh, Robin Hood. We don't want to have too few people with too many resources, but we want enough people or more people or as many people as possible to have enough. Well, conservatives are going to look at this very, very differently. Conservatives are going to say, wait a minute, you know what? I went to college. I gave this time. I got a degree or maybe even an advanced degree. I put in this time, this effort, these internships. And I should always be paid more than, in fact, somebody that did not go to college because they didn't put that same time and effort in. I earned my keep by what I did. And now I should keep what I earn. And if you don't feel like you earn enough, then you know what? You go earn your keep. You work harder, like maybe somebody did that went to college. And in fact, you take responsibility for your satisfaction and don't take your satisfaction from my success. This is oftentimes what conservatives will say. And the thought process is, you know what? It shouldn't be that the person that earns more gets taxed more. It should be that everybody ultimately gets taxed the same. It shouldn't be the idea that we all have to shoehorn ourselves into one size fits all government policies. But if you give me more control over my money, then I will be able to find services that will better fit my life. And everybody should have that right and responsibility. Now, when it comes to the morals, this is a little different because everybody so far has been about the idea of regulate or not regulating moral issues and leaving this in the hands of individuals. The root of conservative, y'all, is to conserve or to preserve existing institutions or traditions because we might open doors that would actually be worse than what's already here. Now think about it. Illegal drugs? Oh no, they've always been illegal because they're a problem and they need to stay illegal. Same-sex marriage? Oh no, marriage is an institution. Marriage is a tradition. Marriage is a practice. It's been the same way for forever since the days of Adam and Eve. Why would we want to change that now? Because it might lead to something that in fact is worse. I'm not saying these are my views. I'm just saying this is the mindset. Government would regulate. Government would regulate that abortion right, but they would not only regulate life decisions at the beginning with something like abortion, but government would regulate life decisions at the end. Maybe if somebody had terminal cancer and they wanted assisted suicide so that they would die before they lost too much of themselves to a degenerative disease. Conservatives would say, hey, look, we need to conserve or preserve what's existing. And this could be, like I said, traditions. This could be, like I said, institutions. This could be, like I said, something like church or religion. This could be something as basic as life. Now, you'll notice nobody in class was conservative. And I'll explain a little bit more in a few minutes why maybe that's not that big of a surprise. But we do have one last category over here and we do have one person in it. So let me go ahead and adjust my colors one last time. And let's go ahead and deal with this last one. Y'all, it's kind of an interesting thought here. But sometimes what we end up having is they're Joe and Jane six pack, everyday, average Americans, and they just want to live. But it's really hard for them to stand up to big business. It's really hard for them to stand up to international pressures. It's really hard for them to stand up to interest groups or mobs of willing democratic participants, not Democratic Party. I mean democracy, participants in democracy. And this group up here in my upper right hand corner, you folks are known as my populists. And populists would say that government's job is actually to regulate these Joe and Jane six packs to help them make the best decisions so that, in fact, they can stand on their own 2 feet. And in fact, if necessary, so that they can stand up to these more elite forces that are in our life. Populists are going to agree, in fact, that government should regulate economics. They're going to believe that government, like the liberals, they're going to believe that government should regulate morals, like the conservatives. But populists, and Donald Trump is actually a pretty good example of a populist. Donald Trump said, if you elect me president, I will go to DC and drain the swamp. If you give me the authority, I will fix it for you. And there's something that's actually very enticing about this, but there's also something that is actually maybe a little bit dangerous too. And I bring this up to you because understand, the idea is that if we give government authority to fix things and government fixes things and they do make it better, then government is going to want to regulate more and regulate more and regulate more and regulate more. And pretty soon, we're not really going to be able to do all that much. Now, I bring this up to you because understand on this. Oftentimes populists, and Eileen, I apologize, oftentimes populists have some control issues. And, maybe Eileen, you're one of the people that makes the plans. Maybe you're one of the people that follows through on things. Maybe you're one of the people that helps remind people of what their responsibilities are and how they need to fulfill them. And maybe you're the person that ultimately gets stuck when people don't follow through with the things that they're supposed to do. Well, when government does this, they take something on, but they also have the ability to overstep this line as well. And that's why this can be a little bit dangerous. Now, understand, looking at these categories, and just to be very quick with this, because there's one more thing I want to do. You'll notice Sonia is very, very strong in terms of libertarianism, at least economically. Well, Sonia, there you go. Um, Libertarian's an extreme version of a libertarian is an anarchist. Anarchist. And I bring this up to you because anarchy is the absence of government. And you might say, well, there's no such thing. Well, there's no world government. Would you believe, we've got almost 200 countries in this world and how many trillion people, and there's no world government. We live in a state of anarchy every day. And we haven't had a world war, since the 1940s. So maybe this isn't as crazy as you would think. I'm not saying that Sonia is an anarchist because she would probably need to be somewhere down here. But it is to say, in fact, that there is the absence of government and it works every day. Now, liberals, an extreme liberal, and let me go to Ashley. Oh my God, Ashley, here you are. Seven, you said government should regulate economics. 6 out of 7, you said government should stay out of morals. When you want to regulate economics that much, an extreme liberal can actually become a communist. And Ashley, I don't know if this is a badge of honor or a badge of embarrassment, but oftentimes by taking from the rich and giving to the poor too much and equalizing things out too much, you make everybody the same. Again, you only answered 7 questions, so I don't quite think that this is you, but an extreme liberal can be a communist, and in some instances maybe that's a positive, but there are also instances where it really isn't. Ashley, at least at this point, you're most likely to be the communist in class. Now, let me close with one thing today, and let me clear off the screen for just a second. Let me change my color one last time, and let me draw this you and just get you to think about your life. Let's say that here you're young, let's say here you're old, and let's say that here you're middle age. Y'all, when you're younger and you think about your life, and I was this way too. I mean, I had to work myself through college. When we're younger, we're more dependent on things, right? It's not like we've got that great job. Oftentimes we've either got roommates, or, parents, family that we're living with. We don't exactly have the best car. And, you think about it, we need help to pay for college. We need help to pay for lots of things. Oftentimes when we're younger, we are more liberal than we will be at any other point in our life. Now, don't misunderstand. I'm not saying that we're going to be liberal, but I'm saying that we're going to be more liberal. And it's not so much because of what our mindset is, but it's because of what our station in life is. We're more dependent upon others to provide for us. Now, funny thing happens. We get more to middle age in our 30s and our 40s. We got kids. We've got that mortgage. We've got that really good job. We've got that SUV. Oftentimes, we become more conservative than we'll be at any other point. And I bring this up to you because, if you really sit down and you think about this, we want government to conserve or preserve the things that we have. Maybe it's protecting our house. Maybe we don't want to have to worry about our car being stolen. Maybe we don't want those illegal drugs in the park across the street. Maybe we want our kids to be safe. But the idea is we're more dependent upon government to protect what it is that we've got versus giving us things or helping us gain things that we don't. And then a funny thing happens as we get older, we maybe make that shift liberal again. When you retire, now it's more about retirement and Social Security than it is earning money. The kids have grown up, house is paid off. There's not an SUV because there's no need for it. I mean, if you think about it, young people want their drugs legal. Older people want the government to pay for their drugs. It's not that different. And I bring this up to you because, again, it's not necessarily that our minds have changed, but it's that our needs have changed that kind of impacts what it is that our mind views. Y'all, I'm going to create a bonus quiz for this. Take a look at it. Good luck and enjoy the rest of your Sunday. I will see y'all tomorrow. Good night.